Last week, we talked about throwing the scriptures open and finding, and whatever pops up, that's what we do. Is that right? Yes. So, I'm not going to open it because somebody will think I went to where I wanted to be. Anybody? How about you?
What?
Sure.
You want to go? Oh, to open yours up?
Sure.
Well, go ahead, open.
Come on. Or you can bring yours up. Okay. Just open up and point where you want. You gotta get back a little bit, there's a lot of prophecies in this. There you go. Where do you want put your finger on? Okay. Thank you, darling. We're in chapter 5 of Genesis. There she. And she hit right in the middle of the genealogy. It's basically the genealogy of Adam. And if you want to start reading through it, everybody's read Genesis, I'm sure. And everybody's read the genealogy of it. And basically the genealogy of this takes us to Noah. Okay? And throughout the scriptures, the way I look at it, when we look at this is setting up. Let's see, how do we say it? Whatever his plan is in the beginning, okay? And in the beginning, he reveals the end, okay? But he also reveals all of the beginning, clear to the end. And when you get to the end, the basic thing that he had in the beginning was the Garden of Eden, which I would say was his kingdom. It was his paradise. It was what he was planning for the world. I'm not trying to think for him because I don't really know why he just didn't stop there and just say, here, everything hunky-dory. But it wasn't, okay? He made man to have, he made man to be able to reason. And the problem with us reasoning, we always think we can reason better than he can. We always try to, no matter what anybody's ever taught you in the scriptures, it's always got some man's heart behind it when the translation went through, so you have to dig deep. So, if we started in this, we go for all the way up to chapter 6. It's gives you the years of each one of these. I don't want to read through them. If you want to read through it, I can, but I think the main thing is that it's reading up to Noah, and it's giving the genealogy that shows you from Seth. So we know that there was Cain and Abel. Abel was slain by his brother Cain, and Cain was put out somewhere. We don't know where he went, but he went out there, okay? And so the lineage started with Seth, and that was the chosen one, and this was about those that called upon the name. You read that. I think it says, this is the book of the genealogy of Adam. In the day that Elohim created man, he made him in the likeness of Elohim. Male and female, he created them, and he blessed them and called them their name Adam and Yom in the day that they were created. And then he goes on that Adam lived 130 years and brought forth a son in his likeness. Okay? Now, Adam was made in the likeness of the Creator. Seth was made in the likeness of Adam, which means that he had the same inward parts that would give him the idea of reasoning, to understand and try to reason, and to make opinions and be like we are, okay? That he's basically is in the likeness of the Creator, but it's only through the fact that Adam was, but he's not. So we can look around the room, right? We are one race in the whole world. Because the only race I ever found in the scriptures is the human race. I wrote that down on a health deal when they'd asked me what race I was, and I put down human. They didn't understand that. Honest, they didn't. They said, well, are you Hispanic? I says, no. Are you black? I says, no. I says, I'm a human. I said, there's only one race. We're all the same. We all came from the same creator. Well, yeah, but we have to. Okay, so anyway, I put down, I don't want to tell you. So, I mean, they can look at you, right? They can look at you and see who you are. But anyway, there's only one race in the world. And he said he made us in our likeness. So when I look at this room, I'm looking at Elohim. Because the likeness of him is within each and every one of us. And I don't think he's talking about looks. He's talking about heart and the soul and the mind of man, okay? And I think that's what he's talking about when he said in his likeness and our image. Well, the image of him is pure, all-knowing. So I think that's the image that when he said he was building when he made man in his image and his likeness, that's what he was talking about. It wasn't about looks. So I'll leave it at that. That's just my opinion, and it's not worth much. But anyway, looking at that, I don't want to go by, unless you guys want to go and add up all these years and find out how long it was for Methuselah to live 960 years or something. But the 962 years. But anyway, it leads up to Noah, and it leads up to the flood. Okay? Now, I don't know how to work on this, but we know there was Adam, and we know there was the woman, Eve, or whatever you want to call her, and she had a son named Seth. And then after that, it says, never talks about the women, it only talks about the men. And I don't know why, because you can't have the men without the women. So, but anyway, when he brought forth Seth, then he brought forth other sons and daughters. Okay, and I don't know, man. What did Adam live? Somebody. 800 years. Adam lived 930 years. He could put out a lot of kids in 930 years, I guess. He might have to have another wife or two, I don't know. But anyway, so that we know that this was not the only people, because each one of these people, it said they had other sons and daughters all the way through, sons and daughters. So when we get to chapter 6, and it came, so we'll move on from 5, but actually her finger was at the top of the page, so it's close. But, and it came to be in chapter 6, Genesis chapter 6, and it came to be when men began to increase on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, and that the sons of Elohim saw the daughters of men, and that they were good, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. How many different ways have you heard that chapter, that verse spoken of? Men of Elohim, or sons of Elohim. What does that say? Read yours first.
Mine says the sons of Yah saw that the daughters of men were attractive, and they took wives for themselves whomever they chose.
Okay. Who were the sons of Elohim?
The 200 angels.
Huh?
The angels that came, the 200 angels.
Well, what about all of these men that were calling on his name that he called that they were the sons of Elohim?
The son of men, and then the son of Yah.
Okay. Well, that's...
And those are the giants. the angels, the 200 angels that had came down
You're-
and made the pact.
You're reading out of another scripture, maybe Enoch or something.
Oh, no, I have read that, yes. But,
Because that's not in here. Is it? Okay.
I have read it and it's just out of memory.
I know, okay. Well, yeah, I've
Oh,
read.
yeah.
I'm not trying to put it
No.
down. I don't, I've read Enoch, tried to. There, there's about 15 different translations from it, and 5 of them are from the same person. So he couldn't make up his mind, so he made trend. But don't get me wrong, we know that there was some writings, whether it was a book or it was a commentary about Enoch, because it was. I don't know if you ever heard of Brad Scott. Okay, well, Brad Scott actually got to look at some of the scrolls that came out of Qumran when in the archives over there, and the actual pages of Enoch was only about 3 or 4 partial pages spread quite a bit apart, and they figured it was a commentary that was written about maybe 100 or 150 years before Yeshua came on the earth, because there was a group of people, the Essenes, that were out in the desert that were keeping track of the scriptures and were writing them and keeping them alive, and that's why they were putting them in jars when they got used down to the point where they couldn't read them again, so they would redo them.
Well, in the book of Jasher, it also speaks on the 200 angels as well.
Well, okay,
John.
I'm only reading what is actually,
what somebody put in.
reference, no, in the Bible. That's what led me to those books.
John.
Is that when I'm reading in
Okay, well,
Joshua 10,
in my translation, they
it
must have
says,
left out a
isn't
lot.
it written in the book of Enoch, or isn't it written in the book of Jasher? I got that out of the King James Bible, so that set my
Well,
curiosity.
But if you read that, that's not scripture, that's a commentary. I don't wanna get in an
Yeah,
argument,
you're
okay?
gonna-
John.
So, huh?
I have the stuff, the Torah. It's the app on here that has the Torah in Hebrew on it, and it says the verse also says the males among the divine beings saw how pleasing the human
Right.
women were, and in translation, the word that they use, I can't say it because obviously it's in Hebrew, but one of the definitions of the word is angels or divine ones or
Messengers.
gods.
Messengers, angels is the messenger.
Right.
Okay. Well, I was going there, I knew this might come up, but anyway, to me, when you talk about giants, if you look at the translation of the words, if you go back and look at giants, it says men of astound or renown.
Yeah.
Mighty
Right.
men.
Well, men of renown are still here today. These are the people that control the world, and it's the money people, the people that have the power, have the money.
Right.
And those are the people of renown that I think that they were talking about. They were there in the beginning. So when we read in Genesis, it says that like the days of Noah, at the end in days, it's going to be like the days of Noah, which was chaos. And take a picture of what's going on in the world today, and it's going to probably get a lot better than that. So I don't see supernatural beings out there taking control. I see men with supernatural imaginations taking hold of how they want to live their lives and what they want to go on. But that's just me. So anyway, and Yahuwah said, my spirit, my ruach, shall not strive with man forever in going astray. In his flesh and in this day shall be, or in his day shall be 120 years. So I guess that's why we only live to be 75, 85, 95, 100, 110, whatever. I think it's more was he was relating to was Methuselah was alive at the time of the flood, or he died right before the flood. And they had 120 days to straighten things out before the flood. Or man was only going to live 120 days. But at that time he was striving with men, because that's what he says. So the men were striving with it. So you could look at it either way. And I'm not making an opinion on either one. I'm just saying that there was a period of time there that he was trying to get man, just like today, just like when he was in Egypt, just like he was in the 40 years in the wilderness, trying to get them to understand him and to remember that this is not about me or you, it's about him. This is his words, and he's guiding us from the beginning all the way through the scriptures. And so when I'm reading this, I don't understand the flood, the concept of the flood, but evidently to him that was the way to cleanse the earth, which would mean like a mikvah will wash it clean and start over. Could look at that like a baptism, a mikvah. So we wash the earth clean. We have 8 people on a big box floating around with a bunch of animals in it for 40 days and 40 nights when it's raining, and then I don't know how many other days, 3 months or so. Not really, but when we look at this, and if you got, don't get me wrong, if you got comments and you want to throw something at me or throw something in, to me it was a cleansing of the earth, okay? And there's 2 ways he cleanses. One is with water, and one is with fire. And he says he's never going to flood us again, but he's going to fix the earth. He's going to cleanse it next time with fire, right? I mean, that's pretty much what he says. So both of these are cleansing. So he's given us a picture of what he can do in the beginning with water. So there's going to be something like that in the end that's going to cleanse the earth with fire, okay? And don't get me wrong, we have a lot of people out there. I know there's a lot of people out there that don't think the way I do, but there's a lot of people out there that don't believe that the Sabbath is necessary. They don't believe that Leviticus 11 clean, what food is, clean and unclean things. They don't believe that they have to worry about the Old Testament because it went away. But those people that are still worshiping the same Creator, in most ways. They're still looking at Yeshua, or they call him Jesus. They're still looking at him. And in the end when you go all the way to the end, he says that all those whose names have not been blotted out of the Lamb's book of life will be at the white throne judgment. Okay? And the only second death is those who have already been blotted out of the Lamb's book of life, and they don't even come to the white throne. They're cast into the lake, and that's their second death. It's not like they're going to be in there for 1,000 years suffering with Hasatan and the beast or whatever's in there. I think the way I look at it is that that's second death. It's death. It's gone. They don't exist anymore. That's what I look at. But there's going to be millions, billions of people that I believe that's not going to be just 8 people in a water balloon that's going to replenish the earth. It's going to be scorched. It's going to be, if we read Ezekiel and you read all of the prophets, most of the prophets, it gives you these things. And he didn't tell us how we're going to know it, but he gives us signs and things that are going to happen. But all those signs have been happening for years. But, however, I shouldn't say but, however, if you look at them, they're getting worse all the time. They thought World War II was the end. They thought maybe the Korean War, and every time they had a war, they thought, well, this is the end, this is the end. I think when the end comes, you're going to really know it quick. It's going to all come down at once. It's going to pile on us. But there will be some that make it through it, and there will be some that won't. And it doesn't mean if you don't make it through the tribulation or the great distress or Jacob's trouble, however you want to look at it, doesn't mean that you're not going to be at the white throne judgment. Because there are people that the first ones he takes up. are those that in him that are in the grave waiting to be risen, you know. So, anyway, I don't know how I get up from there to there, but in the beginning, that's what he's showing us. He's showing us the end in the beginning, the cleansing of the earth again. And I think if you read Revelation and you read it, it talks about cleansing the earth again. Okay? Now, there's one spot where Moses tells the Yahuwah, blot me out of your book. If you're not going to go with us in the wilderness and take us to the promised land, blot me out. Okay? He didn't get blotted out. Because we know he went through the wilderness and he made it to the edge of the promised land. But if there's people out there, millions of them, that have just absolutely, there's, you know, Bill Maher talks about, you know, people that think that there's a God. They're just, you know, kind of lunatics. But if you're at that stage in your life, and those are the ones talking about, that you're being blotted out of the book. From what my understanding would be, I don't know, other than that. Because it just says that you have to completely disregard him as any entity at all. He's not the creator of the heavens and the earth. Well, we know he's the creator of the heavens and the earth. This thing didn't make itself. The universe didn't make itself. It didn't have some kind of a lightning hit a mud hole on a piece of dirt floating around in the middle of the universe to create earth. He created it for man just the way he wanted it for man. If you read the first chapter, when he talks about in the beginning and he gets to the third day, he goes, the moon for the light, the minor light and the major light, the sun and the moon, and that was the third day, and it was good. Okay, good in Hebrew is tov or tav, however you want to pronounce it. In Hebrew, that doesn't just mean good. It means it's the way it should be, and there's nothing you can add to it to make it any better. That's what tov means. And when somebody says tov day, that'd be great if it stayed the way every morning when you first wake up. But anyway, and on the sixth day, at the end of the sixth day, he said it was very tov. He put that other word in there. In other words, it's done. This is the way it is. So he made the earth the way it was, with man on it, for man. So we know that, and we know we're going to be here until we're not. You know, I know that in our family, we have three of our children. So our oldest has had 2 dissected arteries. One of them was on the main artery down his back. They helicoptered him to USC Medical Center, was in intensive care for 2 weeks. They were trying to decide if they were going to go in and make a bypass and do the surgery on it. Well, in the 2 weeks that he was in there, his body formed its own bypass. So they never had to do surgery on it. And then 2 years later, he had one on his aorta. They had to go in and I called it a flex duct, put a flex pipe in there for him, patched it up, and I said it was really good. So hopefully he won't have that again. It's kind of strange to have dissected arteries. And then we have our other son that has something with his adrenal glands that have enlarged and has something to do him. This guy, he's had it all his life, worries about everything. I mean, he worries about everything. Very pessimistic, but he is a believer, and he's really strong believer. He's more of a hermit type. He doesn't go to churches and stuff. He sticks within the family and some friends. So, but they're talking about having to do he had a diverticulitis. They had to take out part of his colon, and they had to put it back together. So the first guy that did it, they looked like they looked like somebody with buzzsaw cut him open and stitch him up. It looked like a train track when they were done. And then the guy that had to go back and put it together couldn't even use the same surgery. Same deal, they had to make one alongside of it because there's so much scar tissue. So now they have to do surgery on these adrenal glands. They might have to remove them. So anyway, so we got that going. And then we also have our daughter who's been going with breast cancer for, well, not breast cancer, but she's been 9 years, going on 9 years. So we had this stress in our life, and we're looking at this. It's hard to look at your kids, and all of these things could be fatal. And so we have to kind of put our lives. So we just come to this thing, you know, we don't have control of it. The Creator has control. So we believe that if our daughter, who said she was only going to live for 6 months, she wouldn't make it to her next birthday 9 years ago, and she's still alive, we're thinking pretty much that the Creator's got some plan for her, I would think, or something. So anyway, I don't want to get off on my stuff, but I'm just looking at how life is, and we all have everybody has these problems, and we have to learn how to live through them. It's right here, okay? How did Noah do it? When all the chaos was going on in the world, and all of these things were happening, their world, and he was chosen, how did he just do you think that the Creator just, I'm gonna make you a perfect person? He didn't do that. It was the family the genealogy of his family that brought him up to that point in his life that made him listen. And because he listened, in the same way with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they listened. Moses listened. Aaron listened when he spoke. And that's what we have to do. We don't hear, I've never heard him speak. I know some people have. I know Carol says she has, but I see actions. So that's how I go about it. But anyway, getting back to the scriptures, what was made in the beginning, what was written in the beginning, is a picture of the very end. And the end, the very end, is the new beginning. Is that not right? You know what it says? There's a new heavens and a new earth. I think it's more of a new land where the kingdom of heaven is going to be, and then the rest of the earth is going to be out. There's going to be people that are outside the kingdom. It's not going to be the entire earth, because the word in Hebrew, eretz, is always translated as earth. But when you're talking going into the land, when he was talking about going into the land, he was talking about going into the eretz, into the eretz. So the land, or a piece of dirt, or a bucket of dirt, is eretz. It's all the same word. So sometimes we get the picture that the whole earth is going to be a kingdom, when he describes the kingdom as the basic area that he promised Abraham, which is, it's huge. It's from the Euphrates rivers to the Nile River, from the point of Arabah up to Lebanon. That's a pretty big area. Is going to be the kingdom. So anyway, getting through to Noah, the first thing they did was put animals on the. Now, how did Noah know clean? He didn't have to do anything. He didn't have to know what was clean and unclean, because it was a pair of all the unclean animals, and I would say 6 pairs plus 1 pairs of all the clean animals, because you want more clean animals than you do one unclean animal. But he didn't know what they were, and I would think that they were probably all babies or infants. That way they could get them all on that ark. But I'm just thinking, so that's just me. The Creator is very innovative. He can make anything happen. So I'm thinking, well, he just brought all the youngins in and put them on there, and that's how they made it. But the first thing they did when they got off, they offered a sacrifice up, and then he told them, all that we have is for food. He never made any distinction between clean and unclean. He just said, all this is food. Do you know how many times the Sabbath is mentioned in Genesis? 1 time. 1 time. said on the seventh day rested, and he called it Sabbath, and the Sabbath was a sign for him and his people forever. One time in all of Genesis did he speak about the Sabbath. So he never spoke to Abraham about Sabbath or Jacob. If he did, it surely would have been in there. He transcribed this to Moses so Moses would have it. So we was talking last week, and I said something about the Torah of Moses. Well, the Torah of Moses, if you look at Deuteronomy, or Devarim, which is Debar, which means word, and Devarim is words, and he was told to write down these words, so everything that the Creator told him, covenants, the commandments, the way to live with your neighbors, way not to live with your neighbors, everything that you're supposed to know, he said, write it in a book and hang it on the Ark of the Covenant so that all the priests would have it, all the people could see it. They didn't read it, but they could see it. Sometimes it got lost because it go through and see this. But anyway, so the book of Moses was basically, the Torah of Moses is basically Devarim, or Deuteronomy. If you look at Numbers, most everything that happened in Numbers is anything that was commanded was translated over into Deuteronomy, in the same way with Exodus was transferred. Now, Leviticus is something of its own, but that was a priestly thing that went with the priest, but it was for the priest to make sure that the people lived by that. So that chapter 11, clean and unclean foods, that was part of their what was the actual process of making yourself available to present yourself to Elohim when you made up your offerings to him, or the slaughterings, or however, I don't call them sacrifices, but the slaughterings. So anyway, all the way through Genesis, and I haven't got out of chapter 6 yet, but all the way through Genesis, you'll never see of a feast day, a Passover, any of these things. They didn't hear of that. They didn't have that in those days. And when he says appointed time, there's a time when he says at the appointed time, or at the appointed time, or the appointed time. It would be like the day of birth, when Sarah was supposed to have a son, and at the appointed time, 40 weeks later, she had Isaac. At the appointed time, it was the time that it was appointed for him to be born. So we don't have any of that in Genesis. There's the things that they did. Abraham was tested 10 times, and the final test was, of course, Isaac. And that's when the Creator told him, now I know you love me. And that's why he spoke to Abraham, that relationship with Abraham, and that promises that he made to Abraham would be forever. So, anything that you read in Genesis about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is still for us today. Any promises that was made to him. Jacob went to sleep on, put his head on a rock, and he woke up and he wrestled with the Creator. Anyway, that's not the time. When he was going in, and he woke up and he seen messengers ascending and descending. And he said, surely this is the house of Elohim, and he called it Bethel, but at that time it was called Luz. And he said, if I will give you 10%, if you promise to keep me clothed, fed, and a roof over my head. That's all Jacob asked for. That's all he wanted. And the Creator agreed to it. So today, you can thank Jacob for that, because most of us have a roof over our heads. Most of us have clothes on our backs. And most of us get to eat once in a while. So, all of those things in there, the importance of Genesis all the way up to Exodus is a picture of building the house of Israel. Did you agree with that? The 12 tribes going in to the land or into Egypt. And he said in the 4th generation, he would bring them out. Now they weren't in there for 400 years because Isaac had to live his life. And Jacob had to get to 130 years before he went in. So when you add it up, they might have been in there 190 to 215 years or something like that. So you figure in the 4th generation, the 1st generation would have been the 12 tribes. And then you'd have the 2nd generation, 3rd generation. Moses and Aaron would have been of the 4th generation. And those were the people that he was bringing out. So anyway, that was a hard pick for me. But every time I open Genesis up and I look at the first 20 chapters, I've already got the whole story of the book of Genesis because I've read it a dozen times. My coming into this faith was go read the book of Genesis and read all the way through Revelation and do that 100 times and maybe you'll understand what Revelation is about. And so that first night, like 2:30 in the morning, I started reading. I read Genesis. I only read the first 5 chapters, first 6, right up to chapter 6. And I went back and read it again. I read it about 6 times trying to figure out. And the only thing that had stuck in my head was the Sabbath. And I told my wife when she woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, she wondered what I was still doing at home. I said, well, I'm waiting for it to be 8 o'clock in Kansas or Oklahoma. And I says, do you know that we should be keeping Sabbath? She said, I went away. And I says, it didn't say that in there. It says it's forever. And I says, I read it. I went to Leviticus or to Exodus, and then one of those chapters it says this is the Sabbath and it's forever. And I said, so how come we don't do Sabbath? I didn't go to church, okay? She went to church. I didn't go to church. I gave up on it back in the 70s. But anyway, she went and told all of her friends. She says, you know, I've been praying for John to get the word and to get closer to God. And now he woke up this morning, he wants to be a Jew. That's true. And so she had her circle of people praying for me that I would figure out that I shouldn't be doing this. And so every day she'd come home with all this list of things that read me out of the New Testament, that showed everything one way. And I would go in the old, say that says forever and that says forever. And so then she'd go back and tell them after about 2 weeks, she started believing. And then she'd come home crying because they all laughed at her. They said, now you're turning to a Jew. So that's where we've been ever since, laughing at each other. Anyway, it's getting kind of like hour uptight. I know that's kind of boring, but I hope that he comes close to what you wanted to do. I don't know how else to do something like that with that. I was hoping she might hit middle of Ezekiel or
Yeah, me too, really. I was.
Ezekiel or Jeremiah or something like that, or even Judges or Kings, But that's okay. She just
You flipped.
Well, I was watching because I thought she was going to go to the index. And we'd be here forever.
I was like, man, when she go deeper. But it ain't us, it's y'all, right?
Yeah, she did a good job. Anyway, we'll let that go with that. If I don't want to offend anybody. If I said anything to offend anybody, or you think I'm off base, that's perfectly all right because I missed second base a few times and first base and home plate. But when you read the scriptures, you have to take everything in context and keep it in the context of what is written. So to take one verse out and try to make something out of that one verse without understanding the context of it. And in this case, if you're doing Genesis, the context of Genesis, you have to go back to verse 1, chapter 1, verse 1, and remember that's where it starts. And you got to keep it in the context of what he is doing, creating He created a society of people that he had to destroy, but he kept the people that he wanted to carry on what he wanted, and he brought them in out of the flood, and he started creating a family which ended up the house of Israel. Not the house of Judah, the house of Israel. 14 tribes of people, if you count Manasseh and Ephraim, okay? So that's creating. He created everything. Do you know when Isaac was put on the stake, or on the, when he offered Isaac up, and then they found the lamb, and said that Yahweh, will provide the lamb. You never saw Isaac again until his bride showed up. Okay? And that's a picture that you gotta remember. So, but it's all about creating. He created the picture of Yeshua way back in the beginning when he said, when you look at John, says, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God, and the Word is God, right? Well, the Word could not be there without that Tav that I spoke about, the alphabet. He made the alphabet so that he would have words, to put the words so that we could read it today. Translated several dozen or maybe hundreds of times what we have now, but the truth is still there. It's there if we don't search and seek it out. All right? So any questions?
Mr. John, I just want to verify, did you say that Noah didn't know about clean animals? Or he did know about clean animals?
No, not until he got, as all the Creator said, you're going to do this, I'm going to send you, he says, you're going to put on one pair of all the unclean animals, and you're going to put on, well, some people say 7 pair, but I think it was more like 6 pair and then 1 male, because he sacrificed 1 male from all of the clean animals when he got off the ship, went out to the boat landing. Noah didn't go out and gather the animals, they were sent to him. So where he learned what clean was,
Yes, he did learn.
he didn't know it at the time, but he learned by how many animals were coming that looked alike. Okay? That would be my,
Yeah, because in Genesis 8, verse 20, it said Noah built an altar to the Lord, and he took every clean animal and every clean bird and offered a burnt offering on the altar.
Right.
So when you did a
Yeah.
burnt offering, it had to be a clean
well, that's what he
animal.
said, when they came on, you only had 1 pair of all the unclean animals. Okay, and then on the clean animals, they had either 6 or 7 pairs.
Because
Okay?
even Abel did a lamb, and that was a clean animal.
Huh?
Abel, when he sacrificed,
Right, he's a
it
lamb.
was a clean animal also.
Yeah, but it doesn't say that they knew it, but they knew
No.
what, they were offering up, when they offered those things up, those weren't burnt offerings, they were offering up like a prayer that you do
Yes.
for dinner.
Mhm.
You're great, if you want to ask for the blessing or whatever, they were offering it up to him, for him to accept that.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
But he did understand what clean was. He
Yes.
would have, if you were out there and that's what you had to go by was all those animals coming. Because I think there was 1 male of each clean animal that he offered up.
Yes.
Yeah, so, but that's a good question. I hope that answered it, because
Yes.
I think that's the way I would look at it, that's how he figured out who was clean and who was unclean,
Yes.
was by how many animals were coming. Anybody else? It's time to,
Prepare our hearts to receive the blessing.